Okay, so we are beginning our online international education fair and the webinar is about to start. I can see we have about 100 students. I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope this is going to be a useful information when you're going to be attending. Till the end of the webinar, you will be able to learn about the scholarships, application fee waivers, the COVID-19 updates, and many more. So watch till the end and ask any question that you have. I hope it's going to be worth. Thanks.
My name is Will McIver, and I'm the Director of International Business Development and Strategy at the American University of the Caribbean. Now, hopefully this will be the day that changes your life forever. And it's quite interesting because I'm going to be talking about the just medical programs. And it was the last questions to the last speaker were about the development of the COVID-19 virus now in Dubai. I think it's quite interesting at this time because never has the health profession been under so much scrutiny and gained so much respect and such good reputation. And I think it's a very good time, obviously, to consider being a doctor. It's a very prestigious qualification anyway to receive, one of the highest paid jobs in the world, and a very, very popular route for students who come from India, especially if you're into science. So it's one of those professions that's always going to be in vogue, but it seems to be particularly in vogue now because it's in the limelight, should we say. Okay, so I'm just going to be talking very, very briefly about my university, which is called the American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine. I'm going to be talking about the USA, I'm going to be talking about the Caribbean, and I'm also going to be talking about UCLan in the north of England. Now, this is where it may just get slightly confusing, but hopefully I'll make it interesting for you. We are a university which has existed since 1978. We've existed for 40 plus years. We've had over 7,000 students go into in the American healthcare system. But we've recently formed a tie-up with the University of Central Lancashire in the north of England, which is an established medical school where your students can now get the chance to go to the UK to use as a platform for getting into becoming a doctor in America rather than have to go to the Caribbean. For those of you who aren't familiar with why Caribbean universities exist, I'll just give you a little bit of background. The Caribbean universities exist because getting into American medical schools can be quite complicated, bureaucratic, lengthy, expensive, very, very high competition. So even if you are a brilliant student, it's often very difficult to get into a medical school in the USA. So students in India tend to go to places like Russia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Philippines, etc. Or sometimes they will go to a Caribbean university. And you may have heard of some of the bigger names like ourselves, Ross University, Sabre, American University of Antigua, American University of Barbados, people like St. George's University. So those universities are very, very popular. But what we are doing now is we have our Caribbean program in the UK. Now, why the UK? We're trying to attract more international students. The UK has a great reputation. It has first-class universities, first-class medical facilities, and we're now offering students a chance to use that as a launching pad for their careers in the USA and also in the UK, because we now have what we call General Medical Council approval, which means that you can actually go and do your residency in the UK as well as the USA. Now, we have two types of program. We have a program for the four-year MD programs, four-year MD, which is a four-year medical degree for, excuse me a second. So we have a four-year medical MD, which is a four-year program for students who are already possessing a bachelor's degree. And we also have a 5-year MD, 5.5-year MD for students who've just left school. So we have two types of program. So if we're talking to the students on here who have already got a bachelor's degree, maybe you've got an MBBS already, or maybe you have done pharmacy, or you've done veterinary science or dentistry or something like that, or maybe you've gone into one of the sciences like biomedical sciences, biotechnology, organic chemistry, physics, etc. If you have a science background, then you are eligible to come and do a 4-year medical degree with us. Now that aligns very, very closely with how you would do a medical degree in the USA, which is normally done on the basis of a 4-year bachelor's degree followed by a 4-year postgraduate qualification in medicine. So it's very, very different from the MBBS route, which you're used to in India, whereby after school you will go and do an MBBS, perhaps in a third country, perhaps in India, or perhaps somewhere else. So the program we're offering is for students who already have a bachelor's degree and want to turn that into a qualification which they can then use to practice medicine in the United States. And now, of course, just this week, they can do that in the UK. We also have a 5.5-year program, which is for students who've left school, whereby they do more or less the same degree, but they have an extra sort of year and a half on top of that, which involves getting a bachelor's degree in science at the very, very beginning. So the student, after leaving school, within 5.5 years, has a medical degree, which normally in the USA would take up to 8 years. So the next slide you're seeing is quite an important one, because this kind of defines who we are. We have a very, very successful pass rate of getting people through what we call USMLE Step 1. Now, USMLE strikes fear into the hearts of many Indian students because it's considered to be quite a difficult exam to crack. But that's usually only for Indian students who've gone to places like Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, where the teaching of medicine is slightly different, and often the students can fall down on things like the ethics, legality, procedural issues, and not necessarily the science. USMLE stands for United States Medical Licensing Examination, and that is the first of 3 steps that you need to become a doctor practicing in the USA. And nowadays, of course, on the end of this program, the students can actually do what we call PLAB, which is the British equivalent of that, which means they're eligible to practice in the UK as well with this American style degree. And for those of you who want to become doctors, we are recognized by the Medical Council of India. So that means that if you ever wanted to come back to India, there is a door open for you, because you can come and live, work and practice here back in your own country. And of course, in many cases, that is more profitable for people, certainly if they are in the private sphere. And one of the reasons why people do want to go to the USA and why 25% of all the international medical graduates working in the USA are from India is because of the lucrative nature of that qualification, because it opens so many doors. Students earn, well, once they start doing their residency, the students will begin earning anything from $50,000 to $70,000 as part of their residency, which usually lasts between 2 up to 5 years. But once they actually hit the job market proper and they're practicing as doctors and physicians in the USA, they will be earning anything from, the starting salary is usually in the region of about $150,000 up to $200,000. But the average salary is in the region of $300,000 plus, and that goes up higher depending on your specialty, whether it's in oncology, epidemiology, virology, obstetrics, gynecology, neurology, and so on. And the other important thing is that we do have a very successful rate of putting students into residency of 91%. So 91% refers to the number of students that we managed to place into residency once they've graduated. Now, I'm going to run through this qualification this presentation very, very quickly, because it's quite a long one. You can see here that we're offering students the chance to go to one of 2 campuses. The one on the bottom is our campus in St. Martin, which is in the West Indies. But because we're using and trying to internationalize the campus at UCLan, the University of Central Lancashire, we're promoting that one first and foremost in India, because it just makes sense, obviously, given the strong ties between the UK and India. So the students will be going to the UK, but they'll be following a curriculum which is that of the American University of the Caribbean, which is recognized in the USA. For a medical science program, for a medical degree, you have to do a program which consists of 2 parts. The first two years are a medical sciences curriculum, which lasts 5 semesters. Followed by what we would call a clinical. You would then do USMLE Step 1, and then you would go on to do your semesters 6 to 9.5. So that would be basically the second 2 years, the second half of your degree would be your clinical rotations. Now, your clinical rotations you would do in the USA, the UK, or both. And obviously, given the fact that we are primarily promoting a route that takes you to becoming a doctor in the USA, we would recommend that you do the USA for most, if not all of your clinical rotations, but you can stay in the UK. And of course, that is quite important to take into consideration, that you can now actually do a residency in the UK. Although we wouldn't call it a residency, we would call it a house doctor role or a house job. And in India, you would know that as post-graduation. Once you've completed the clinical science portion of your program, you're going on to do USMLE Step 2, which is the second part of your 3-part route to becoming a doctor. And then you've graduated. So you've got your mortarboard, you've got your gown, you've got your champagne, your bubbly, your selfies, and your family are either there in person or they're watching it online from South Asia. But you're not actually licensed to work, because you then have to go off and do your residency somewhere in North America. You can actually do your residency in Canada as well. You can do it in the United States, and of course you can now do it in the USA. And following that, you then will do your USMLE Step 3, which is the third step to becoming a doctor in the USA. And once you've successfully passed that, you are now licensed to live, work, and practice in the USA. So effectively, we could summarize our program as saying it is a very strong migration route for doctors who are interested in living, working, and practicing in the USA or of the UK. And one of the reasons why we're keen to attract doctors to the USA is because there is likely to be a big shortage in the American healthcare system by the year 2030. And there's likely to be a shortage of anything up to 140,000 doctors. And 1 in 4 doctors now in the USA is foreign trained. So you can see the importance of international doctors to the American system. Now, the slide in front of you just summarizes what our program is all about. As you can see, it's got 2 parts to it. You can see you've got 2 years plus 2 years. The first 2 years are medical sciences, leading to USMLE Step 1. And the second 2 years are the clinical portion of your program, which you can do in the UK, the USA, or both, followed by USMLE Step 2, followed by graduation, followed by residency, in which time you do the USMLE Step 3. And then you are licensed to live, work, and practice in the USA. So that is essentially our 4-year medical degree program. I'll just quickly run through some of the pieces that you'll need. So just for this one, for those of you who are already have a bachelor's degree and you're on the call, we would be looking from you. So you would need to have a medical admissions test, which usually sort of in India would mean NEET, although there are others available like CASPER. And you eventually, if you ever wanted to come back and live, work, and practice in India itself, you would need to have the NEET exam anyway. We'd be looking at transcripts. You need to have a bachelor's degree with the right prerequisites, as long as you have biology, as long as you have chemistry, as long as you have beg your pardon, sort of, we'll show that in this next one, organic chemistry or general physics, you're okay to get into this program. So we'd be looking to make sure that you have the right kind of prerequisites to get onto the program. We'd also be requiring English in the region of 6.5. So I hope you can see that one in front of you. I think you can. And we'd also be looking for a personal statement from you of 750 words. And obviously becoming a doctor is as much about your character, your personality, as well as your aptitude and your academic sort of abilities. Some other interesting aspects here is we give you an interview, which depends on, obviously, depending on how well you do the interview, you will get accepted. We do offer scholarships, and it's quite an important thing. You can see there on the sheet in front of you that we offer an international scholarship of $55,000. So interestingly enough, this program is likely to cost you in the region of just under $50,000 per year, which if you compare that to what medical students will be paying in the USA or the UK, is actually slightly less than what they would be paying, because remember, you're getting a very, very sort of prestigious qualification that's going to be recognized in the USA, the UK, Canada, and beyond. And we give all of our students a $55,000 scholarship on the fees. And we can actually give sort of scholarships which go above and beyond that, depending on the ability of the student. Perhaps you've won prizes, perhaps you're #1 in your state or your city for a particular subject. but it's important for you to understand that we are actually providing some kind of financial backup and support for students who obviously want to fulfill their dreams of becoming a doctor. Now, obviously, I can't take many questions on this now, and obviously you would be addressing all your questions and queries and your follow-up through our friends at Study Metro after this, but they'll be in touch with me, and if they had any particular questions, then we can answer them through, I can answer them through them. We also have 3 start dates, so we've got a January, a May, and a September start date. So that gives you the flexibility. We've just had our January intake. We've also got a May intake coming up, and the current state of play, that is going to be online. We know that for sure. And September at the moment is planned to go ahead, but it may be going online. Obviously, given the times of uncertainty that we're in at this moment in time, I can't confirm exactly how the program will be in September, but it is probably a 50-50 chance that it will be online. And then thereafter, we do have a January 2021 entry. So for those of you who are delaying because of the current climate, you may wish to sort of push your program back into September or into January, but May is still available for you there if you need to start your medical career right now. So obviously, I'll just go into talking very, very briefly to you about Preston, UK. Our program is set in Preston, which is in the north of England. Many of you may be familiar with that place. It's in the northwest of England, so it's about 45 minutes from the great city of Liverpool and 45 minutes from the also great city of Manchester. It's about 3 hours from London. England is very, very small. The north of England is considered a cheaper place to live than, say, the south of England, which is 3 times more expensive. So you could probably live in the north of England on campus with us, obviously feeding yourself, socialising, for about £8,000 to £9,000 per year. So it does have a reputation for being a very, very safe and very, very sort of networked and very, very sort of competitively priced part of the world where you can do your studies in peace. I'll just run briefly through some of the pieces that we, which obviously I want to rush through this now because I think we're coming to the end. Accommodation during the first year, we would expect you to live on the campus of the university, but you're obviously free to go out in year 2 and share a house with your buddies, and obviously the bills, electricity, food, etc., etc. The interesting thing about Preston is it's a city of about 200,000 people, but about 30,000 of those are students. So it's quite an exciting place to live and be as a student, with all different types of restaurants, obviously bars, cafes, etc., etc. So it's quite an interesting place. Also, the other thing is that it has a large immigrant population, mostly coming from South Asia. About 20% of the population hail from either Pakistan or Gujarat, and they came over back in the 1950s, 1960s. And this is what you would see in the facilities that we're using at UCLan. Very, very typical sort of excellent campus facilities, which you'd expect from a modern international medical school. And it's probably fair to say that what we are doing is we are, as I say, we are in the American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine. So we are running an American style program on the campus of the University of Central Lancashire. So we're using all the facilities. And the students are part of that university. So they're living, breathing, walking, talking, eating and sleeping and drinking that university, just as UCLan students would do. So there's a snapshot there of the labs that you would be able to use in UCLan. So as you can see, it's very, very modern, very, very well equipped, and probably much more technologically sort of equipped than what you would probably get in somewhere like one of the former Soviet countries if you were to go there. So I'm just going to rush through this very, very quickly. This is all just information on the kinds of different stages of the program, and I'm recapping a lot of what I've said already. The slide that you see in front of you describes what we would call our core teaching hospitals in the UK. So you can see there some of the hospitals where our students would go and do their clinical portion of their program. Just rushing on very, very briefly, I'm going to bring it to a halt in just about 1 minute. Those of you who are getting worried. Residency is a very, very important part of what we do. Everything in our program is designed to get you to residency. So all those 4 years of study are designed to get you into the right kind of residency in the USA. And in front of you see all the different... Hello there.
Sorry to interrupt in between. Actually, there is a limited time. So, like, can you please just wind up?
Sure, I will do. Yeah, I said I was going to do it in 1 minute. So residency is quite important, and you can see our success rate here. This year, we managed to place 323 students into 91 with a 91% success rate into 18 different specialities across the USA and Canada this year. And just this slide here, which you can share eventually. Our friends from Study Metro can share this with any students. Just describes exactly sort of how we sort of provide the support for residency. And in front of you, the slide describes some of the type of hospitals that you would be going in to do your residency. So you can see they come across a number of states into a number of specialties and different types of universities across the USA. And there's some information there about our GMC accreditation, which means that any students who are applying for our program now and come to our campus in UCLan will be preparing themselves for a career which will lead to the United States or the UK nowadays.
So this brings us to the end of the webinar. I hope the information that you have gained today is going to be useful for you for making an application to the university. If you still have any question or any query about applying to the university, then you contact one of the Study Metro representative. Thank you so much again for joining this webinar. Have a good one.